Hello, welcome to Triggered Care. I'm Alex. This is a continuation of my experiences with motherhood, part 2. Today I'm going to be talking about childbirth and the first year or two of raising my wee one. So I think last thing that I talked about was the crazy family member who was assuming that I was giving birth all the time. So a week before I actually gave birth, I went through a false labor, which was on Halloween, actually. And we were walking around the mall with my sisters and my mother and my husband. And we were walking a lot, and I started having contractions. And so, I got taken into the hospital with my mom and my husband, and they're like, oh, it's just false contractions that can happen if you walk a lot. So it's like, oh, okay. So they send me back after checking and seeing that my water hadn't broke. And then about a week later, I started going into labor in the evening. It was after dinner time. We had dinner with a couple of friends, and afterwards I started feeling the contractions, and I thought that they were Braxton Hicks contractions again. But it was considerably closer to his due date. So I'm like, you know what, let's give it 30 minutes or whatever. I'm going to go for a short walk, which I could not walk at all. I didn't even make it down the block because those contractions were so hard. I'm like, oh my God, I might have to sit through this. So then we went back home, me and my husband, and we played cards for 5 minutes. But I couldn't even play cards because the contractions were coming sooner together. And then I had to go to the bathroom. And when I went to the bathroom, some pink discharge came out, which turns out is the mucus plug. And then I looked that crap up on Google, and I'm like, oh, yep, it is time to go to the hospital. So my husband takes me to the hospital, and this is like near midnight that we're in the hospital. Like, it's getting really late now. And so we get to the hospital, and they're timing out my contractions, and they're checking my cervix and all that. I'm not dilated very far at all. Like, it was 1 centimeter or whatever metric unit they use for a long freaking time. It was 1, and then it got to 3, like 6 hours into it. And so for that first 8 hours, I didn't have the epidural done because they're like, well, this is going really slow, so we're just gonna wait on the epidural because you don't want to have to take it and then have it wear off by the time that you're pushing and stuff. So it was at least 8 hours into just having contractions every minute to every 30 seconds until I got the epidural. And I'll tell you what, ladies, I'm going to tell you something. That epidural is amazing. It's absolutely... I got that epidural, and I immediately stopped feeling the contractions. Like, they had machines on me to monitor the contractions, and the nurse was like, oh, you just had one. Did you feel that? It's like, I didn't feel anything. I feel ready for a nap because I am tired. So, I took a little bit of a nap, and during this time, my husband is... Okay, so my mom wanted to drive over to the hospital that morning, which it was a weekday. So my stepdad was at work, and my sisters were at school. And so she called my husband saying, oh, I'll be there in a minute. And then he said, hold up, lady, just wait until the end of the school day and the end of the stepdad work day, and then come with all of the family over to the hospital, which she did not take kindly to at all. She went home, and after she got home, she pouted in the car and told my family that my husband said that nobody could be there for me giving birth because she felt like it was a personal insult that I didn't want her at the hospital with me while I'm going through labor. Which I was about a year into therapy by this point, and I knew that she stressed me out. I had learned enough to know that she's a major trigger for my stress. So I did not want her in the same room as me as I'm going through one of the most painful things that a lady can go through. So that was the fun family drama going on in the background while I am going through labor. So I took a nap. The epidural, amazing. Took a nap. Woke up later that afternoon, and then the total time that I was in labor for was 24 hours. So I wasn't fully dilated until about 10 p.m. Or no, like nearly 11 p.m. the next night. And so I'm fully dilated at that point, and it's just me and the nurses and the doctor who is going to deliver my baby was with another woman at this point who was pregnant with twins. And so he sent a nurse messenger to our room and asked me to hold in my baby as my son is breeching, and it's getting very painful. Like, I can feel an intense pressure on my cervix. And this nurse comes in and is like, Dr. So-and-so wants to know if you can hold it in for a while. And I look at the nurse who's helping me out, who's checking on things and watching everything, and I'm like, you can deliver a baby by yourself, right? And she goes, yes, I have done that before, and I can do that. I'm like, okay, because there's no way I'm holding in a baby. There's no way that I'm just going to be like, oh, I don't think I'm going to push right now. I want to get this done as soon as possible. And this was after I already started pushing a couple times. But right before they said, oh, well, it's time to push. Or right after they said, well, it's getting time to push, I had a tiny freak out where I'm like, no, I can't do this. There's no way I can do this. You're just going to have to cut the baby out of me. And my husband was like, no, Alex, you can do this. You can do this. And then I'm like, yes, you're right. I'm just going to push this baby out of me. And I pushed him out in an hour. And I put all my force behind pushing him out. And he came out in an hour, and he did not cry at all. And the doctors were trying to get him to cry. And it wasn't that anything was wrong. He was just chilling. Like, he came out, like, his eyes were wide, and he's looking around at stuff. And I was holding him, because first thing you gotta do when he comes out is you gotta hold him and just staring at him and falling in love with him. But he wasn't crying, so the doctors were like, hey, we're going to pat him on the back a bit to see if he cries, because there's still fluid in his lungs, and that's got to come out. I'm like, okay, yeah, he should be crying. And they were patting him on the back, and that wasn't making him cry. Like, he just didn't feel like crying at all, because he was just looking around and absorbing everything in the environment. And it was like he was already comfortable. I don't know. He was just... Well, and then he got sick later, which, oh my gosh, that was hard. But, so yeah, he was a very calm baby. I fell in love with him immediately. My husband fell in love with him immediately. We would get taken to our room. I'm breastfeeding a little bit, but he falls asleep pretty fast. And me and my husband, we were exhausted by this point, so we fall asleep pretty fast. And then the next morning, we had a nurse come in and tell us that our baby had an infection and that he needed to stay in the NICU, the NICU unit, to get his medicine. And it's a week-long medicine regimen that they have to put this baby through to make sure, he's okay. And I immediately feel like I'm a horrible mother, and this is probably because I didn't quit smoking cigarettes right away. Like, this is my fault. And that was the first parent shame that I felt, was like the first day It's like, oh my God, I already fucked up. I already made him sick. I'm such a terrible person. And I did not leave that hospital that entire week. I did not go home. I didn't get new clothes. I didn't do anything like that. I went down to the hospital store and got some nursing shirts because those come in very, very handy. Probably get those before you have the baby. Get some nursing shirts where you can just pull the strap down if you plan on nursing. But positive things from that was we had a week to talk to nurses about newborn care. We had a week of watching the nurses take care of our son as well, so we knew how to hold him. We knew how to soothe him. We knew what was right to do and what was wrong to do. The nurses were super helpful and super friendly. And so it was almost like we got our own personal parenting class. My little one, he had a number of medicine regimens a day, and it all had to be done through IV. So we didn't let anybody touch him or hold him or kiss him or anything like that. It was only me and my husband who were allowed to touch him. Which, of course, my mother came for a visit one day and got pissed as shit and at me because I told her that she couldn't hold my son. And it's like, no, nobody can hold this boy except for me and my husband and the trained professionals. Nobody else can hold him while he's sick. He needs to get better, and he needs to get better fast. And then I also had a conversation with the nurses, like, do not let my mother in my son's room. Under any circumstances, do not let her in there. The only way that she can get in there is if I'm standing there next to her. But if she tries to come, like, while I'm sleeping or whatever, you do not let that woman in there. And that's kind of where, I realized that, like, my son, I loved him so much. And I still love him so much. But that moment where I'm like, my mother cannot be near my most precious thing in life that I have. She cannot be near him. She cannot touch him. She cannot poison him. I was already worried about that when he was a newborn. And that kind of helped me go no contact later, but that's a different story for a different time. So anyway, we stay there for the week. The docs give him all the medicine that he needs. And then he gets better, which is, thank God he got better. And then we took him home. And he breastfed super easily. I had a super easy time. He was honestly the easiest kid I've ever taken care of. And I'm biased because he's my kid. But also, I'm kind of not biased because all the other kids I was only a nanny for. And I loved hanging out with them. I thought they were all awesome children. But I was also happy at the end of the day that they had different parents to go to. Like, oh, well, now I get to be myself and do all the wacky things that you can't do when you're a parent. But honestly, my son, he slept well, he ate well, he was in the 99 percentile for height and weight and all of that for a long time. He was a very big, chunky, happy baby. He was a very happy baby. He rarely ever cried. The times that he did cry the most was just when I went to the store and he was left with my husband. And that's only because my husband doesn't do well with crying babies or like baby emotions. He doesn't have that same emotional intelligence that I have with kids. So it's harder for him to connect with a kid in order to soothe the child. So that was the only times that he really cried. But when I was home, he was never crying that much at all. He giggled, and the times that he giggled would melt my heart so much that I spent weeks just trying to get him to giggle again because I love the sound of his giggle. I was in a very happy mom high during the first 6 months, especially the first 6 months that my son was here. It was probably the oxytocin, the chemical that makes you breastfeed, that gives you a high feeling, like a euphoric feeling. I was very much feeling that my maternal instincts and maternal chemicals were very much turned on. And it just kind of confirms that I always felt like I was supposed to be a mom, and I still feel that way, and that's okay. I feel like some women are just like that, where you love children and you know that this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be a mom, and that's okay. And it's okay to like that, and it's okay to be passionate about that. Like, I love my baby so much, and he brought so much joy and a different perspective to my life, which I talk about in another video, 5 realizations I had after becoming a parent. So that first 6 months was absolute ecstasy of just breastfeeding and sleeping and eating and cleaning and, just hanging out with my son and watching him grow and loving every second of it. Which I feel very blessed with that too, because I know other PTSD survivors who have had postpartum depression afterwards, or who struggled with colic, with their babies who can't digest food easily and all that stuff. And that's super difficult. I am very lucky and fortunate that my son was just the easiest baby in the world. I swear to God, he is an old soul of just, and his intelligence always, it doesn't, not like in a surprising way, but it astounds me how intelligent he is all the time. Like, he is just cutest. Okay, this video is turning into just me bragging about my son. I'm sorry about that. But that's what parenthood did to me, pretty much. So the first 6 months, awesome. The next 18 months, pretty much, still pretty awesome. But anxiety starts to creep back slowly into my life. About a year after my son was born, I started smoking cigarettes again. And then the hallucinations started coming back. The psychotic episodes started happening. Very slowly, gradually, it got worse and worse over the next 18 months. It was real slow, though, so I was still having plenty of good times and grounded times, but slowly that started to change, and it's like my brain started to go back to where it was before I was pregnant, and dealing with that was a lot. I tried EMDR right before my son turned 2. I tried to do EMDR, and that caused a number of stress diseases to ignite. My functional dyspepsia, my alopecia, that sort of thing, where my stomach wasn't working right, my hair was falling out, my hunger was gone, pretty much. And so that those stressors really started hitting me around the time that my son was 2. And when that happened, parenthood kind of shifted from like this weird ecstasy land where I could be fully absorbed into nurturing my son. And part of that was him becoming more independent as he got older, and he didn't need me for all these things, because with a newborn baby, they need you for everything. So it's very easy to get obsessive compulsive about just like, I'm a nurturer. All I do all day is love my baby and feed him and change his diaper and all of this stuff. Like, all I do is read and Like, you do all the baby activities because that's what the baby needs, and it feels so good to be needed that much. But as that baby needs you a little bit less and less, and as they grow into toddlerhood, that is a weird, because it almost feels like rejection, but it's not rejection. It is healthy development when your child gets to a point where they need you less, where they can use their words for communication more, and they're developing their own personhood and their own interest, and they very slowly want to cuddle less, and they want less kisses, and they don't want to be tickled as much. And then they get to this point where it's like, oh, I'm feeling that loneliness again. I'm feeling that brain depression again. I'm feeling that PTSD weight on me again. Oh, flashbacks are starting to come back. Psychotic episodes are starting to come back. all of this mental illness that he seemed to help with so much through the pregnancy and early babyhood slowly came back, and then it felt overwhelming to where like I couldn't handle it. And this is when my baby's a toddler and trying to deal with these things with a child. I mean, that is really, really hard. So, right. What else? Mental illness, babyhood. My brain just blanked out for a second there, so my apologies. So yeah, after my mental illness started to take a bit of a dive, I saw another psychologist. I kept going to my trauma therapist. I switched up my psychiatrist. I did some mental health revamping because I mentioned this in my 5 realizations video that one time my son hit me, and during his babyhood, toddlerhood days, and I like shrunk into the corner and had a PTSD reaction to my son hitting me, and that really kind of kicked my butt into gear into you need to learn how to manage this well. And that's something that I should have done a lot more exercises on before I got pregnant and before all of this came to me, but at the same time it's hard to know what you need to work on when being a parent is new. Watching children is not new. I still have my children knowledge. I still have my children love. But being the actual mother, being the physical role model that your son, number one, that he looks up to, alongside my husband, obviously, but we're the number one role models for all of his future relationships, for all of his future everything. Like, we're setting up examples for him, and we are acting in the way that he is eventually going to act, and his brain is naturally going to fall into those same cycles that we set up for him. And I don't want those cycles to be, oh, well, when you hit somebody, they cower in the corner and cry, Or, oh, well, we bite our fingernails all the time. Or whatever anxiety habits that you have. So grappling with that, I mean, it's freaking hard as poop. But he is going to be 4 soon, and he is a delight. He's absolutely delightful, and a big part of that is acknowledging his emotions. Because I think that's where a lot of parents kind of start slipping up, is with a toddler, when they start having tantrums, when they start talking back to you, when they start rebelling against you in little child ways or lying to you. A lot of parents' first initial reaction is anger or, disappointment, very negative emotions that you kind of project onto this kid. And a lot of that may be that's what your parents did to you when you did those things, when you were a kid. And so it just comes natural to be angry at conflict or crying or whatever it is, or to try to get them to not cry because you can't stand the sound of it. But if you switch up those reactions to when you hear your child cry, you acknowledge, hey, you sound sad. You sound very sad. Do you want to tell me what's going on? And then helping them with breathing exercises as a toddler. Also, since he was a baby, we've been doing breathing exercises. He knows how to take a big breath. He knows how to breathe long enough to calm himself down. That is a very important skill to have. Considering that I only got a hold of this skill in the last few years, that would have helped me tremendously as a kid if I had an adult helping me through breathing exercises when I was upset. So I knew how to calm myself down, and I knew how to ground myself already. So even integrating my own recovery work with parenthood has helped a lot, because it also shows me how I should treat myself. I have all this love and empathy for my son. I got to reflect that back on myself a bit, and that helps me recover even more. So, oh my goodness, this just feels like a long ramble, and it was a long ramble. This video was suggested by a fellow support group member. So thank you, Miss Lady, for your suggestion. I will probably make more videos like this in the future as my son grows older, as I think of more stories. If you have a video suggestion, you can always message me on the Discord, send me an email. All those links are down below. And as always, have a good one.